So this video is kind of for the people that missed class on Tuesday before Thanksgiving. This is kind of what we talked about. It's just going to be a quick, brief um, kind of talk about what we were doing. So um, we're talking about a couple particular elements of art with this next section. The two we're going to be focusing on are value and form. And value is basically the lightness or darkness of an object in a painting. So for value, what we're going to start with is making something called a value scale. And the value scale is pretty much just a series of boxes, and each of the boxes has a different value, getting from the lightest to the darkest. So to start, we just make a big rectangle, and then you just divide it in half, and then divide it in half again, and then divide it in half one more time. And that creates 8 somewhat even boxes. You can go in with a ruler and make this look really nice. I'm just doing it quick, but the first one is a value of 1, which is always just the lightest you can possibly make it, which is the white of the paper. And then there's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. 8 is going to be the darkest you can possibly get it. And for 8, you just like scribble as hard as you can and make it pretty much black. And if you're using like pen and ink, that will be like black. But for what we're doing, you'll use your pencil, and hopefully you have a pencil to do all of this. That's ideal. Pencil and paper, and you'll actually put this in your sketchbook. If you don't have your sketchbook, you can just do it on a piece of paper like this. Just don't lose it, okay? So darkest you can possibly make it, white of the paper. Then everything in between, you're going to use something called hatching and cross-hatching. A lot of the time when people are first starting to do things like this, they will want to do a little bit of drawing and then rub it with their finger to make it nice and smooth. And that is perfectly fine for a lot of purposes. But for what we're doing today, we're not going to do any of that. What we're going to be doing is, for the really light areas, you can hold your pencil from the very back and hold it really lightly and just barely touch the paper and make these really soft marks. And those are all going back and forth this way, and I'll turn the page and make them going this way as well. Just these really, really soft lines. And from a distance, it just looks like gray. When you get up close, you can see all these little lines going one direction and the other direction. And that's 2. And then 3, you'll just do the same thing and slowly build it up and get it a little bit darker than the 2 is. The idea is that you're gradually going to bridge the gap from these light values to the very dark ones. And it should be pretty slow how you build up that difference. But I'm not going in here and doing any rubbing. So that's 3, and then 4, 5, 6, 7, and then all the way to the very dark one. Once you have your value scale completely done, the next thing we kind of talked about was making a 3D form. Talked about how this is a 2-dimensional object, only has height and width, nothing else to it. But then if you make something called depth, a 3rd dimension, that's where you get 3D from, all of a sudden you have something that can be considered a form. A form is just any 3-dimensional object. Now this is the illusion of it being 3-dimensional. It's on a flat surface, but it gives off the impression of being something that's 3-dimensional, and that would be form. Now, once you have a 3-dimensional object like this, you can use this thing we're talking about with value to make it look even more 3-dimensional. Helps it accentuate it, I guess. You can make one side be in shadow, like a light source is coming from here. This side would also be in shadow. And here again, I'm using hatching and cross-hatching. I'm not making this side as dark as the other one. And when you do yours, you can make it look a little bit tidier than this. And then the shadow on the ground will also be very dark to start. And then as it gets further away from the object, it'll actually get lighter and lighter. something like that anyways. So, in your sketchbooks, try and make at least a couple of these three-dimensional forms and use value to make it look three-dimensional after doing your value scale with 8 different values. And that's it for what we did on Tuesday of last week. And then I'll post another video for what we did on Monday of the next week.